Welcome back, Prospect football fans, to Week 3 of Prospect Football Weekly, sponsored by Buffalo Wild Wings and Mount Prospect. I'm joined again with Coach Sebastian. Thanks for coming again, Coach.
Jack, it's good to see you again.
All right, so in last week's episode, you talked about how typically you see the biggest growth in teams from Week 1 to Week 2. How do you think the team did in that respect?
Well, I think we grew dramatically from Week 1 to Week 2. In terms of what we did offensively, we were dramatically better. We struggled, obviously, in Week 1 to do much of anything correct. Unfortunately, we showed a lot of inexperience. We got a lot better as we moved through Week 1 to Week 2. We practiced better during the week, and we played better in the week. It's amazing how practice can be a harbinger of where you're going to be as you go forward. Defensively, I thought our kids did a very nice job. Again, I think defensively we've played much better in the first 2 weeks of the season. Then I think changing a little bit of what we're doing scheme-wise has helped them. They're much more aggressive in what they're doing. But at the same time, I think one thing that needs to happen going forward is, and this is part of the growth process now, Week 2 to Week 3, is we need to be able to continue to finish football games. And how do we do that? Again, it comes back to learning how to, in that later part of practice, mentally lock into what needs to be done. Yeah. Because that's exactly what's going to happen in a game situation. You're tired. You're physically beat up a little bit. How do you finish a practice is going to be how you finish a game.
All right. So in your guys' Week 1 game against Schaumburg, you started off really dominant in the first half. What do you think changed in the second half that kind of shifted the game?
I think the game really stayed at an even pace pretty much the whole way. Obviously had a very good first drive offensively. I thought the defense played well early. We were struggling a little bit in the second quarter offensively. We started to not move the ball as much. I think they made some good adjustments defensively. We shot ourselves in the foot once or twice. I think defensively we continue to hold on. I think two big series in the game is the drive after the turnover, where we don't move the ball and all we get is 3 points out of it. While it was a great field goal by Anthony Santangelo, if we would have been able to put 7 more on the board and make it 14-0 early, I think that would have been helpful. Would have set a little bit of a tone and kept momentum going. And coming out of halftime, I think the defense did a very nice job. Right away getting the ball out of their hands to start the second half, and we didn't move the ball. But then again, the offense responded after they scored to make it 10-7. Part of it just comes down to we left our defense on the field too long, and they're a much bigger football team than we were, and they wore on us. After a while, and it just became more difficult. And our kids never stopped fighting, which is, I think, something that's a hallmark of our program. Understanding that you need to take value to what the day is in front of you. I thought our kids did that. They just made one more play than we did, and hats off to them. I think it was a very good football game. You can feel a lot better about where we're at coming out of Week 2 than obviously where we were Week 1. But now again, we're in a situation where we need to continue to grow here going forward into Week 3. We're kind of a little bit behind the curve. We've got to accelerate this curve again the same way we did in Week 1.
Okay. What areas of the game are you most proud of the team in against Schaumburg?
I think just our offense continuing to grow and improve. I think our defense continues to play hard. I thought our special teams did some nice things in this game. Our kickoff coverage was a little disappointing, and it's something we've got to fix and work on. I think we're still kind of tweaking and doing some different things with our punt game. So there's some personnel changes that we've decided we're going to make a little bit to help some of our special team stuff. We need a few more guys to kind of step forward and kind of help get a kid like Brennan Keene, who you got a chance to obviously, or we'll get a chance to see here, get him off the field a little bit. We need a chance to be able to get Michael Shafts off the field for a series on offense. We need a couple more guys who can help us a little bit. Guys like Drew Turtel would be an important factor if he can help us on the D line this week. Get Zach Sekula more reps and opportunities. I think this week is something we're looking to try to do. Those types of things need to, I think, happen for us to continue to move ourselves going forward. Okay,
so you guys play a pretty good amount of sophomores on the offense, especially. How do you think some of those more inexperienced players stepped up in Week 2?
I think if you watch a kid like Matt Neal, you don't realize that kid's a sophomore. Matt is not the biggest player on our team. Matt's probably about 5'7", 5'8", and he's probably about 135 pounds. He's done a nice job blocking, considering that he's not necessarily the biggest kid in the world. I think one of the things that you got to be impressed with him is how he goes and gets a football. Week 1 he makes a great catch that unfortunately gets ruled out because of called pass interference on us at the end of the half, and takes a ball away from a kid. He does it again. This week on a big 3rd down play, he makes a 40-yard catch and gets us in position to potentially tie the football game or win the football game at the end of the game on Friday night. Part of that's because he goes and doesn't practice. He took a ball away from a DB yesterday that literally just snatched it right out of his hand. He may not be the biggest kid in the world, but he wants the ball and he'll go get it. I think Ryan Traviola's continued to improve out on the edge. He had some nice plays in the JV game because he didn't play much in this varsity game, but he started week 1. Matt Myers, learning and growing. I think Sebastian Swistak has got great potential on our O-line. I think Adam Mecky's done a great job on defense. So we've got 5 or 6 kids that are playing a lot. Jack Friedrichs is involved in the special teams. We have a small senior class. We've had some depth issues coming out of our junior class, so our sophomores have stepped up, and I think the nice thing is to see how these 3 groups have meshed together to be one team. I think that tells you a lot about your senior leadership, that they make sure that those kids are welcomed and understanding that they are going to help them be successful going forward.
Yeah. So what do you think the turning point in last Friday's game against Schaumburg was?
I think we're up 7-0. We forced them to give the ball to us on a punt turnover. They have a botched snap, and we have the ball at the 24-yard line, and we don't score 7 points is a huge factor in that game. I think a 14-0 score, halfway through the first quarter is a little different approach. Momentum's rolling a different way. Them being able to kind of get that stop, we kick the field goal and it's 10-0 is helpful, but it also kind of got them back into the game a little bit at that point. Not to say that would have been a blowout in any way, shape, or form. I don't think that you're not going to see blowouts. When we play football games, they're all going to be close. But it would have set a different momentum and tone to I think what was going on. We needed that type of cushion. I think that's a big, huge change point in that football game. Okay,
so your guys' quarterback and running back duo, Jimmy Martin and Michael Chaffis, improved a lot. I think from week 1 in terms of the running game. How important is it for them to be your leaders for this team?
I think it's important, for them to be leaders along with Brennan, along with, guys like Jack Heiss at this point is a senior offensive lineman. I think defensively, guys like Ergostolo and Burkhart as well. But, I think one of the things that we got to understand going forward this week is Jimmy has to continue to improve in the passing game for us to be successful. We have to have a throwing game, and right now we're struggling with that. I think he's done some nice things. I think he got much better from week 1 to week 2. We have to give him more protection time. Michael Chaffis has to be more of a factor in the football game, and that's partially, because we've been struggling with some of the things we've been doing block-wise. Michael's been taken away from us essentially. Michael had 71 yards on 8 carries. Yeah. Well, Mike should have the ball more than 8 times in a football game. We've got to find more ways, and that's us as a staff. We've got to find more ways to get him the football. But and we've talked with Michael about this too. He's got to be better blocking, as a lead blocker as well. And he knows that, and he's even, he was the one making that point Saturday morning watching film, is that he needed to do a better job going forward. And the nice thing about Michael is Michael doesn't just say something, Michael's going to go do it. Yeah. You will see a much better blocking game from Mike Chaffis. That's why he is one of the premier athletes in this area, because he's highly determined to be better. So I'm looking forward to seeing that type of focus as the week goes on. I think that's what will help bring leadership to this team.
Okay. What kind of experience or knowledge do you think the team gained in your week 2 matchup that could be useful for the rest of the year?
Just that practice means something. I think that's a big factor. You got to understand that practice means something at this point. And if you practice a certain way, you'll play a certain way. Whether that's good or bad is up to you.
Okay. Thank you, Coach Sebastian. And next we will be joined with offensive lineman Brennan Keene.
Welcome back to Prospect Football Weekly. I'm here with Brennan Keene. And, brother, let's talk about 2 juniors who are going to have big roles this season and have had big roles to start the season in Michael Chaffis and Jimmy Martin. They both had pretty successful running games last week. How do you think the offensive line made that possible?
Well, we started off the game really well. We came with a lot of energy, firing out low, playing our technique, using our quickness to our advantage. We're not exactly the biggest unit, so that's how I think we made it possible.
What adjustments did you think the offensive line make from week 1 at Hinsdale South to week 2 at Schaumburg?
Well, week 1, we were kind of inexperienced too. A lot of our players, not a lot of experience between the 5 of us. But week 1, we kind of were standing up and trying to wrestle with guys bigger than us. But week 2, we obviously showed that we could have some success by playing low, firing out.
With a year of experience that you have, how do you try to be a leader for this team?
Well, obviously this year we're kind of a younger team. Some guys have some inexperience. I try to be as much of a vocal leader on the field as I can be, and I also try to lead by example, just playing hard every play, so hopefully those kids follow.
What has been the focus of the offensive line during practice this week?
The focus has been basically the same as it has been week 1 to week 2. It's focusing on our technique and playing low. We've focused a lot more on pass pro, which our pass pro kind of fell off towards the end of the game against Schaumburg. But yeah.
How do you think that going low is going to help you this week against Niles West?
Well, we're going to be undersized. We're used to that already. But playing low, there's 2 types of leverage, and playing low is definitely one of the most important ones.
What mindset does this team have going into this week?
We are very excited. We took some very large leaps and bounds from week 1 to week 2, but we got to keep improving at that rate. We lost some time during the summer, but we just got to keep climbing at this point.
Where do you think your biggest need of improvement is going into this week?
I just think kids need to stay mentally tough throughout the game. We started off the game really well in the first half last week, and we kind of started falling off towards the end of the third quarter and the fourth quarter. We just got to learn to finish games.
Brennan, thank you so much for your time. Stay tuned with special guest, Coach Scott Winters. And welcome back to Prospect Football Weekly. I'm here with Coach Scott Winters. Coach, welcome.
Thank you.
After a nice win against Schaumburg last week, how do you think the JV team has progressed in the first 2 weeks?
Well, with the JV team, being the leap from freshman to sophomore ball is pretty quick as far as, added size, speed. So they've really, taken the first 2 weeks to really get used to what is needed for them to win JV football games. We were a lot better last week as far as technique, scheme, playing fast. Pretty much, you could tell they had a week of experience to, just get that feeling of what the next level of football is like in high school.
How do you try to prepare them for varsity football with many of them a year away from getting onto varsity field?
Well, the nice thing is, they're practicing with the varsity every day during the week. So they get to see what it's like during individual drills, the expectations, the speed, the technique which is needed to play well on the varsity level. So really when we get our own time as a sophomore team or with some juniors that are coming down, we try to emphasize, that technique, the speed, and the tempo, which, they're used to already in the varsity practices.
How do you think that practicing with the varsity kids helps the JV kids get better?
Well, they get to be around kids like Brennan Keene, a kid who's had 2 years of varsity starting experience, a kid who knows what's expected of him in this program. So they get to see that firsthand of how he practiced and how he approaches every day. When, in the past they haven't had that, they just kind of hear about it. Now they get to see what these guys that they're watching on Friday night do every day to prepare for Fridays.
Who have been some of the main contributors for your junior varsity team this year?
Adam Ryerson, our quarterback. Peter Thune has played really well at linebacker with not a lot of football experience. Caleb Smith playing both ways on the offensive line and at leading our defense on linebacker. Those 3 guys have really been kind of the vocal and leaders and the standouts in the game. But a lot of people have improved from week 1 to week 2, and we're looking to do the same here in week 3.
What has been your main emphasis during practice this year?
This year, much like our entire program emphasis is to be better every day. We want to take steps every day to improve on, just little things. At the freshman level, you can get away with a lot. You can have 1 or 2 kids win you a football game. As you go up in levels, you need all 11 guys on the field to be doing their job, pulling their weight. So every day we focus on the entire unit getting better, taking their, individual responsibilities and making them see that it applies to the team as a whole.
What do you think is going to be key for your team to get a week 3 win against Niles West?
Like I just said, taking what we learned from last week and doing it better. We have a lot of guys who the JV experience has been a little unique so far this year. We've had a game with just sophomores, a game with sophomores and juniors. Now we're gonna have a game with sophomores again. So some guys who didn't quite maybe play as much last week are gonna get a chance to step in and help their team. And our focus has been to take care of the little things and do our jobs and do them well.
Thank you, Coach, and stay tuned for more Prospect Football Weekly as Jack Ankeny prepares Week 3 against Niles West with Coach Sebastian.
All right. Welcome back to Week 3 of Prospect Football Weekly. I'm your host, Jack Ankeny, sponsored by Buffalo Wild Wings in Mount Prospect. Coach Sebastian is back to join us to preview Week 3's matchup against Niles West. So, Coach, what sticks out to you most about your matchup against Niles West?
Well, I think we're just very focused on what we need to do in practice this week to get better. Niles West is obviously, a team that is young. They're trying to get better as they go forward. So, I think both of us are trying to find a little bit of a footing of what we're trying to accomplish. So our focus has really been more on us than anything else this week.
Okay. What have been the points of emphasis during practice this week?
I think finishing practices. I think mentally finishing a game has to happen by mentally finishing a practice at this point. So that's kind of really been the focus in terms of what we've been dealing with.
Okay. What adjustments from Week 2 will need to be made for the Week 3 game?
I think, a much improved second half. In terms of what we're looking at this point, making sure that we are better in the second half, both on offense and defense, I think will be important. That's got to be really where our heads are at during the game week to get us prepared for Friday night.
Okay. So Niles West had a pretty tough loss to Buffalo Grove. I think it was 40-7.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll definitely be hungry Week 2 or Week 3, I guess. What did that game show you about that team?
It's Week 1, that game. It's one of those situations where I think you're all trying to figure out what you're about, what you're doing. That game was a little closer than the score ends up being. I think it was 26-7 at half. Okay. They do some really nice things. They run a nice little veer option offense. I think they're aggressive on defense. They're going to play straight man against you and say, we're going to take stuff away from you. I think they did some nice things in Week 2 against Solorio. Solorio's got a Division I quarterback in Quincy Patterson who demonstrated why he's going to go play football at Virginia Tech. He did some really nice things that game. That's just one of those situations where an athlete, was better than everybody else on that field at that point. So, they do some really nice things. I think we've got to continue to worry about us getting better to be successful on Friday night.
All right. What do you think the biggest key to securing the team's first win this week will be?
I think practicing, the way that is necessary to be successful on a Friday night. You've got to be able to finish a practice at this point. I think yesterday we did a little bit better with that. We still have lulls at points in practice that we've got to work on. And that's just a mindset going forward.
All right. Thanks, Coach Sebastian. That's it for Week 2 of Prospect Football Weekly, sponsored by Buffalo Wild Wings. We'll see you next week.